Very nice.
What you see is what you get.
Okay, I guess we can begin. It's 3 o'clock. We are in chapter 6 of the book of Kings, chapter 6. And we've been talking about the building of the Beis Hamikdash. And I did want to mention that there's a medrash that mentions that the Egyptians were known to be skilled construction workers. And because of that, Shlomo HaMelech wanted to hire them. So he sent to the king of Egypt, to the Pharaoh of the time, that he'd like to hire some of his skilled construction workers to help with building a house for Hashem. Now, the Pharaoh did not appreciate this. He was very upset that Shlomo HaMelech is building this elaborate, fancy building. And he said, what can he do? He thought to himself, what can he do to mess things up? So he came up with this idea, and he asked the stargazers of Egypt that they should pick people who are going to die this year. And they looked into the stars, and they figured out who is going to pass away that year. And he got together a whole group of such workers, and they sent those workers. Pharaoh sent those workers to Shlomo. Now Shlomo, told him he's going to pay them well. This is, it's not looking for any freebie over here. He just wanted the best. And I guess, for some reason in Egypt, they had certain talents. There's a lot of noise. Let me see where that's coming from. Oh, let me just mute everyone. That'll be easier. Okay, so they figured that they'll get these workers from Egypt. It'll be make it. He wanted to make the most beautiful Beis Hamikdash. He wanted to be very nice and fancy and beautiful. So anyway, so they sent these people who were going to pass away that year. Now, Shlomo HaMelech was a prophet, and he saw what was going on. So he sent all of them back. He sent them all back with a set of tachrichem. Tachrichem means shrouds. So he handed them each a shroud, and he sent them back to Egypt. And he said, do they not have enough shrouds in Egypt that your king sent you over here? So he sent them all back with their shrouds. And obviously it made quite a impression on Pharaoh that Shlomo HaMelech was quite tuned in to what's going on in heaven, what's going to happen. And he was able to foresee what the trick that Pharaoh had in mind. So that's the medrash that that really shows us that it wasn't just Chiram that Shlomo HaMelech was getting help from. He was getting help from, tried to get. We saw in the Psukim it talked about Chiram, which was somewhere in the north, in the city of Tyre, Sor and Sidon. I think it's pronounced Tyre, but it was also, he also tried other avenues to get high quality skilled workers. So the story of building the Beis Hamikdash, as we've explained, this is 480 years after they left Egypt, and the and we mentioned, I think, also that 480 is the amount of time from the first Beis Hamikdash until the building of the second Beis Hamikdash as well. So it seems to be some type of a Kabbalistic number, something connected, some important number, the number 480. And we also we mentioned about the size of the Beis Hamikdash and the ceiling, the height of the Beis Hamikdash, and we spoke about the windows of the Beis Hamikdash, that the purpose of the windows was to shine on the outside, not for the inside. Exactly the opposite of why a person has windows in their house. When you have windows in your house, the goal is to be able to enjoy inside your house whatever's outside. If there's fresh air, you could, if there's light, so the light comes into your house. But the purpose of the windows of the Beis Hamikdash was to spread the light from the Beis Hamikdash to the world. That was the goal of the Beis Hamikdash, and that's why the windows were called shkufim atumim, and they were the opposite. They were made the opposite of regular windows, at least in those days. In those days they had a different way of making the window, that on the inside it would be narrow, but on the outside, on the, I have to remember exactly. One way was the outside was narrow, the inside was very full of light, and the other way was the inside was narrow, and the outside full of light, more wide. And if the goal was to shine the outside, so then the inside was the inner part, the side closer to the house, to the inside, was narrow. That's the way the Beis Hamikdash was made. The outside was very open, so it could shine in all the directions. A regular window was made, the outside was narrow, and the inside was more open, so that the sun would shine in all the directions into your house. So the Beis Hamikdash windows were wide on the outside and narrow on the inside. We also mentioned about the verse 5 that there was the annex that was built all around the Beis Hamikdash, and basically it was 3 floors, and on there were 15 rooms on each side, the north and the south, and on the west side there were 8 rooms. So altogether 38 rooms. And what were these rooms used for? So there were a lot of things that were necessary for the Beis Hamikdash. They needed storage. They had all different types of materials that they needed in the Beis Hamikdash for the sacrifices. And so that was common. They needed a lot of these rooms for their storage, for the necessities of the Beis Hamikdash. They also needed a place for the Leviim to prepare their music, prepare the songs when they played. So this was also something that was that it was used for. It was there were rooms obviously that were used for the purpose of the Levites preparing, because they would play instruments. And last week we also mentioned about the shamir. We mentioned how they cut the stones. There was the shamir. That was also a major part of the cutting of the stones. At least the simple, based on a Gemara that it talks about the story where they got how Benayo ben Yehoyada got the shamir, that certain type of a worm that was able to cut through stone. Very interesting and miraculous type of a creature.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Was Yitzchok Shamir named after the sperm? I wonder.
I have no idea. Uh, so the Beis Hamikdash was divided into three sections. The first was called the Kodesh Kadashim, but in the Beis Hamikdash they called it the Devir. We use that word in our davening. V'hashev ha'avoida l'devir beisecha. May you return the service to the devir of your house, which means of your Beis Hamikdash. The devir refers to, at least here, it refers to the Beis Hamikdash. It refers to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. And outside the devir was the holies, and that's called the Heichal. And outside of the Heichal was called the Ulam, which is like the hall. It's called the hall. And so this Ulam was something unique because they didn't have an Ulam in the tabernacle. It was specifically in the Beis Hamikdash. And Shlomo HaMelech also made something unique. Obviously, it was from Hashem that they should build this, but in order that no one should come close to the outside of the Beis Hamikdash, so he made this annex around it. That's what I was telling you about the rooms that had all the storage rooms. That was really almost like a safety measure for people not to come close. And so it surrounded the entire three walls of the Beis Hamikdash, and there actually was no entrance from there into the Beis Hamikdash directly. It was like a separate building next door that had no inner entrance to the other building, to the two buildings. It was outdoor, and there were 3 floors to it. And as I mentioned, each floor had 5 rooms, so altogether 15 on each side. And then the back side had 8 rooms altogether. And so altogether it was 38 rooms. And the measurements of this outer annex was it was sort of like it wasn't exactly connected because it's hard to connect it to stone without having nails or some type of screws or something. But it was leaning on the ledge. It leaned on the ledge of the outer wall, and so the outer wall was made like an indent into the wall so that the floor could lean on top of that wall, on top of the ledge that was outside of that wall. And that's how that's how the annex was situated. And we're going to now read inside on verse, we're going to start at verse 8. The entrance to the central ground level cell was at the south side of the temple, and they would ascend on winding stairs to the middle story, and from the middle story to the third. So I had 3 floors, and each of the rooms had some type of a winding staircase. So if you want to know how far back did they invent winding staircases, well, Shlomo HaMelech had one in the Beis Hamikdash, winding staircase. And each of the rooms seemed to have a winding staircase that would lead it to the next floor above it, to the cell that was in the next floor above it. And they also had entrances to the room next door to it. So that's how they would get around inside these 38 rooms. We are on verse 9. I just want to mention the word dvir, which I said refers to the Holy of Holies. It actually comes from the word daber or davar, which means a word. and that's the place where Hashem would speak to Moshe Rabbeinu. Where Hashem spoke to Moses was where the word of Hashem emanated from. The word devir sometimes it's used loosely as well, like it's going to refer to, we'll see later on, it's going to refer to the partition between the two, between the holies and the holy of holies. And now we're on verse 9. He built the temple and completed it. He made this temple ceiling of decorative wooden panels under cedar planks. And what that means is that he initially put wood to be the ceiling, but then he put a second ceiling as well. And that second ceiling, I mentioned last week, it had to do, at least according to some opinions, it had to do with the fact that in the Mishkan, the tabernacle, there were also more than one ceiling. So it symbolized that idea. Now, the ceiling had these decorative panels, or some type of which was made from cypress, and the cedar planks were more to protect the actual building, and that's that's basically the two ceilings. Now, the word of Hashem, this is interesting that in verse 11, it jumps from building the Beis Hamikdash to like some rebuke almost. The word of Hashem then came to Solomon saying, the temple that you build, if you follow my decrees, perform my statutes, and observe all my commandments to follow them, I shall uphold my word with you that I spoke to David, your father. So Hashem here, in the middle of discussing the building, puts in this fact that the temple that you build is only if you follow my decrees. I shall dwell among the children of Israel, and I shall not forsake my people Israel. So one of the understandings is that Hashem was telling Shlomo, you're pouring a lot of wealth into this building. Before you pour any more wealth into the building, I just want you to realize that the building, is not automatic, that it's going to be my place where I'm going to manifest myself to the world, because it's dependent on your fulfillment of my commandments. So this is the like the warning that Shlomo HaMelech is given, that he should realize that it's not automatic. It's not like Hashem is sold on this building no matter what. It's that this building will stay as long as you keep. It's on condition. It's not automatic. Now, the word of Hashem that appears to Shlomo, it says it was brought to him by a prophet. And who was the prophet? The prophet's name was a new prophet that I don't think we've heard about until now. His name was Achia Hashiloni, Achia from Shiloh. And he is the one who gives over this prophecy, and that I'm bringing to you from the commentaries here. Mentioned that it's based on a medrash, Seder Olam Rabbah. So while he was building the Beis Hamikdash, he got this he got this word of Hashem that was brought to him by Achia Hashiloimi, by Achia the prophet from Shiloh. Another idea here is that the Beis Hamikdash is it's a physical building, but it really is a reflection of spirituality. And it really is, we shouldn't get lost in thinking about the beauty of the physical building, because it really is all about the Shekhinah, and that's what the whole purpose is. And so the physical building is only a reflection, maybe, or it's a location, it's an honor, but it doesn't really it doesn't really have any essential role except that it houses Hashem's presence. And so that's the idea here, where Hashem is sending his word in the middle of the building of the construction of the Beis Hamikdash. Hashem wants it to make it very clear. And if you remember, we had some of you are learned in the Talmud class about the builders. It says B'chol banayach umudei Hashem, and it says Al tikrei banayach ala baynayach. That it means the builders, that the scholars or the students are called builders. And why are students called builders? Because it's all about the spiritual. And we have to always remember that the Beis Hamikdash's real foundation is the spirituality of the Jewish people. Yes, Susan.
Okay, you use the word reflection, meaning that it's not the building itself, correct? That is so important, but it's the fulfillment of the commandments, correct?
The fulfillment of the commandments will keep the spirituality revealed in the building. Yeah. In other words, more than the building, what the building itself is, it's what it symbolizes.
The building doesn't, in other words, no matter how grand you build it, it has nothing to do with the Shekhinah God being in there.
Well, it is an honor for the Shekhinah. So in other words, the more nicer that you build it, the more respect. So Shlomo HaMelech wasn't wrong for making a beautiful building for the Beis Hamikdash. This is a great honor for Hashem. In fact, in Shulchan Aruch, it talks about that a shul should be the highest building in town. It's an honor for Hashem.
The tallest?
So, the tallest building in town. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch. So it's definitely an honor for Hashem to have a beautiful place. We try to beautify the mitzvahs with with anything, any way possible that we could beautify them. But at the same time,
don't fall into the trap of having that be the only reason.
Right. Don't fall into the trap as that as long as you give money, you don't have to serve Hashem. That doesn't work that way. Writing a check is not going to be the answer to all problems.
Okay.
There are people who think that way. They,
Sure.
What's his name? Elon Musk, who thinks he could, has money, so he can say whatever he wants. So, it doesn't work that way. It's a beautiful building, but we have to remember that it's dependent, and it's also going to be lost if we don't take care of it. And it was lost, unfortunately.
Right.
The first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed by the Babylonians. So,
Rabbi.
Yes.
I saw that there was a Yiddish expression or Yiddish saying that if Hashem lived in a house, bad people would probably bake his windows. It wasn't necessarily talking about the Beis Hamikdash. We were talking about just like if he lived in the house, people would probably bake his windows.
So anyway, the point that we brought with the fact that the students are called the builders is because it boils down to the spiritual foundation. People who study Torah, they are called builders. They're the spiritual builders. Children could be the builders as well. So it all has to do with the spiritual state of the Jewish people. And verse 13 is the famous verse based similar to a verse in the Torah. And I will dwell among the children of Israel. V'shachanti b'soich b'nei Yisrael. I shall dwell among the children of Israel, and I shall not forsake my people Israel. And this is an interesting verse because in the Torah we have Hashem says, "I will build for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell in them." And in the Torah, it sounds like it's talking about the Beis Hamikdash. I will dwell in it, except that it uses the word them. But here it sort of spells it out more clear. Here in the book of the prophets, in verse 13, it says, "I will dwell amongst the Bnei Yisrael." I will dwell here. It sort of like explains what it meant in the Chumash. I will dwell doesn't mean in them in the Beis Hamikdash. It means in them, in the Jewish people. And that idea is a very powerful idea that the Beis Hamikdash, of course, has a great level of holiness, but we also have to remember that we also have that holiness as well in each and every one of us. And even in exile, it says Hashem is with us. Imoi anoichi b'tzara. I am in suffering with you, and that Hashem is here with us. And when it talks about returning the Jewish people, Hashem says, "I will return with them." What does that mean? That he's with us even in exile. So Hashem's presence is here with us, together with us. And now we're up to verse 14. Solomon had built the temple and finished it. And
Rabbi,
yes,
on verse 13, the word V'shachanti, so
Yeah.
the commentaries mention, not in this place, but in Chumash, where Hashem says V'shachanti,
Yeah.
they say V'shachanti, you can break it into two words, V'shachan, and the dwelling is T, Tuf Yud, which is 410, which goes on the first Beis Hamikdash. And if you rearrange the letters of that word, it says Ushanei, and the second is Tuf Chaf, 420, which is the years
nice.
of the second Beis Hamikdash.
Nice. A little hint over there about how long the Beis Hamikdash will stand even before it was built. It's already a hint of how long it'll stand and how long the second one, which we didn't even dream about yet at this point, a hint of how long it'll stand. The first Beis Hamikdash lasted 410 years. Second Beis Hamikdash lasted 420 years, and they're both hinted to. Thank you, David. They're both hinted to in this verse. Yes, Susan.
One time I remember you talked about that in some of the words have crowns or some other letters on top. Are any of those words that you're reading from, do any of them have those extra notations on top of the words?
So there are different things. There's crowns. There's also dots sometimes on top of words. Sometimes you have a letter that's larger than the other words. Normally, we speak it out if there is, if there is such a thing. Normally, like the commentaries will say something here. Why is this letter large or this letter small or this? There are dots on top of this word. So
that's only in the written Torah. That's not in what you're reading from.
Yeah, but we're reading from the written Torah. This is part of the 24 books of the written Torah.
Okay.
The Tanakh, it's all the 24 books of the written Torah. The Talmud is the oral Torah, Talmud and the Mishnah, but the Tanakh is considered all the written. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about Pasuk Zayin.
Yeah.
Where they say they didn't use X or any other metal tools.
Yeah.
In building the house. I wonder how they did it if the whole house, I think, was inside all wood, outside was all stone.
Right.
But the stone, you can put one on top of the other, but what's with the wood? How can you cover a wall and cover the ceiling or whatever it is with wood without using tools, nails or something?
The
I don't
thing
know.
is, even the stones were they had to be certain sizes. So we
But they were
explained that,
pre-cut, I think they were pre-cut. They
so
were
we
not cut
explained
on the job.
they didn't cut them on the job. So, if you think about it, whenever you go to a construction site, you can't stand there too long because you hear noise. There's crazy
Right,
noise
right.
that they're chiseling and all the noise that
Hammering and
construction, the hammering and chiseling and digging. So the thing is, in the Beis Hamikdash, it was the opposite. This was a real place of peace. It was, you didn't hear anything. It was the most pleasant construction site in the world. So the simple understanding would be that they cut everything not on the Beis Hamikdash grounds.
I see.
But the
Pre-cut.
other understanding is that the other understanding is that they used the shamir, which is what we spoke about last week, that they used this worm that had the ability to cut through stone and other.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the other thing is that the wood, well,
I think that Shamir cut it chemically.
yeah, I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
Shamir cutting.
He
I
didn't
don't
chew
have
it.
one.
He didn't chew it. He cut
Yeah.
it with chemicals that he released.
Right. Well, maybe chemicals. Yeah, it
Yeah.
could be. Yes, David.
You mentioned before Shamir, Yitzchok Shamir. So I happened to look it up while we were learning, and
Yeah.
it says that Yitzchok Shamir, his birth name was Yitzchok Yazernitsky, but he changed it to Shamir because Shamir means a rock that can cut steel.
Maybe
A hard one.
really it means a rock. Are you familiar with that word in Hebrew meaning a rock, Ben?
It sounds right, but I thought there was also an animal, a crawling thing that would
Yeah, a
crawl
worm.
and cut.
A
as it
worm that
crawls.
can cut.
A worm, kind of, something like that.
He says
But it says rock.
it says Yitzchok Shamir told his wife that Shamir is a rock that can cut steel, and it's also a thorn that stabs.
Uh-huh.
So
Well,
he changed
maybe
it to Shamir.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, it could be a hard rock, yeah, but
Yeah.
but there's
Maybe he
also a living thing that's called.
Yeah, maybe he didn't want to be a worm. So
In any event, would have been nice if he was a little stronger like a rock when it came to giving away the land. But it's too bad he didn't live up to his name. But what can we do? So going back to where we're holding here. So we're in verse 9. He built a temple, completed it. He made the temple ceiling of decorative
I
wooden
thought you're on 14.
Oh, am I? I'm sorry. Yeah, my paper.
Your answer is on 7 when I asked the question.
Yeah. Okay. You're right. We're on 14. Solomon had built a temple and finished it. That's funny because it says it in 9. He built a temple and completed it. Verse 9. So verse 9 must have been referring to the walls. At least the Radak explains it this way, and the reason why he, that would make it clear why later on it also says he built it and he finished it, because here it just means
the inside. Yeah.
Now we're talking about the inside. Before we're talking about the walls. So he built the temple, finished it. He built the walls. 15. He built the walls of the temple on the inside with cedar boards. From the temple floor to the ceiling beams, He overlaid it with wood on the inside. He also overlaid the temple floor with cypress boards. He built an overlay for 20 cubits at the rear of the temple of cedar boards from floor to beam to the beams, and he prepared this area inside the partition to be the Holy of Holies. So let me just read in the Hebrew over here. So Vayivan as Kirais Habayis, I'm going back to 15. He built Kirais Habayis mi baisa betzlois arozim mi karka bayis akirais asipon sifa eish mi bayis vayitzav zakarka mi bayis betzlois beroishim. So beroishim is this cypress boards. So so he covered the floor with these cypress boards, and then in 16 it's even as Esrim Amma Miyarka say Habayas. So this is talking about the Holy of Holies. The 20 Amos he built of the Yerech, which is the rear of the house, which means the westernmost area. Betzlois arozim, cedar boards, min hakarka ad hakiros, from the floor to the beams, which means the walls. But even like mibayis ledvir lekodesh hakodashim, and he built mibayis ledvir lekodesh hakodashim. From the wall here is using the word dvir as the wall to the kodesh kadashim. He prepared this area inside the partition for the kodesh kadashim. So and then we're up to verse 17, and it says in verse 17 the temple was 40 cubits long. That is the sanctuary at the front. So what this means is from the beginning of the sanctuary until the end of the sanctuary, which means the holies, was 40 cubits. And the Holy of Holies was 20 cubits. So now if you want to add the two together, you get 60 cubits. And if you remember, and I spoke about the Mishkan, the tabernacle and the temple was only 30 cubits long. And that included the holies and the Holy of Holies. So this is double that. It's 40 plus 20, it's 60. In the tabernacle, it was 20 plus 10. It was the holies was 20 and the Holy of Holies was 10 amos. This is the cubits. Cubits is approximately either 18 inches or 20 inches or 24 inches. It's in the ballpark of 2 feet.
18 is an amah.
And amah is a machlokes. It's an argument exactly how much. But we're talking about an amah here. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about here. So so the cedar, where are we up to over here? 17. So we said it was 40 cubits long. And that's without the Holy of Holies. Now, the cedar upon the temple on the inside was decorated with a network of designs of knobs and blossoming flowers. And these were made out of gold, actually. And everything was covered with cedar wood. Stone was not visible, so they didn't see the stone. They saw the wood. Now, verse 19 is he prepared an inner sanctum. Is that how it's pronounced? Sanctum, like a sanctuary? Sanctum? Anyone familiar with that word? In the temple, toward
means I think a temple within a temple.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's pronounced that way. Sanctum?
Yeah, sanctum. Yes.
Sanctum. Okay. Thank you.
It's
What would I do without you, Susan? So he prepared it. What?
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I said, what would I do without you? Use a dictionary.
Please.
He prepared an inner sanctum in the temple toward the inside there to place the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem. So let me just read the Hebrew here. 19. The Devir b'seich habayis mipnima heichen l'sitein shamas aron b'ris Hashem. So he's making the room inside to put the ark. That's what so this is referring to the Holy of Holies. This word Devir here is the again it's the Holy of Holies, where he's building this this room to or prepared the room. Now that he built it, prepared it for the ark. And the Lefnei Hadvir, again, we're in verse 20 now. Behind the partition was an area 20 cubits in length and 20 cubits in width. He overlaid the partition with fine gold, and he also overlaid an altar with cedar wood. Okay, so now it mentions that there was a partition that separated the holies from the Holy of Holies. Now, the only problem here is that it mentions it was 20 cubits in width. Did I read that correctly? Behind the partition, I'm reading 20 again. Behind the partition was an area 20 cubits in length and 20 cubits in width. So again, this is the Holy of Holies. It was behind that partition, which we're also calling the Devir. It's the separation from the holies to the Holy of Holies. And it was 20 cubits in width, in length, and 20 cubits in its height. He overlaid the partition with fine gold. He also overlaid an altar with cedar wood. So the problem here is that we already said that it was 30 cubits high. And how could it say now that it's 20 cubits high? And so there are different answers to answer this. The wings of the Kruvim were 10 cubits high, and between the Kruvim, the cherubs, and the ceiling, there was 20 cubits, altogether 30 cubits if you include the cherubs, the height of the cherubs, the Kruvim. Another answer is that the holies was 30 cubits high, but the actual Holy of Holies maybe was shorter, 20 cubits. That's that is an option that Rashi brings in his commentary.
I would think the Holy of Holies they would make higher.
Even higher. Well, if you look at Rashi,
the Holy may be lower.
If you look in Rashi on verse 20, he says that the Aliyah, the attic of the base Kodesh HaKadoshim, was Nemucha Mishal Heichel. It was lower than the Heichel. So,
wow.
So that's what he says. That's the way Rashi answers this contradiction, at least on a simple level of explaining the verse. You know what I mean? The Gemara seems to.
Well, in other words, the Eichel was the bigger room, was higher, and the Kodesh was a smaller room.
Smaller room. It was lower. It was
lower.
You know.
Rabbi.
Yes.
In verse 15, where they're talking about the cypress and the cedar. So
yeah.
Mayam Loez brings from a Barbanel. He says that cypress is a shorter, stouter tree than the tall cedar. So its natural place was below the cedar on the floor. And the cedar is harder and heavier. Cypress is similar to cedar, but it's harder and heavier. So for the floor, he made cypress. And the higher wood was cedar. I don't know if this adds to what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with wood. So cypress is actually stronger than cedar.
Yeah.
And so that's why it says
cedar is a softer wood.
Yeah, it says
cedar
it's
is
similar.
Softer. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Not only is it harder, but it's heavier. So it's better for the floor.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it says he overlaid the temple floor with cypress wood, cypress boards. So that would be maybe why. So you're saying because it's
cedar you usually use on top, not on the bottom. It's softer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would help if we were construction people. We'd understand the more details. But in any event, there is another answer to this contradiction that I was mentioning, and that is that only 20 cubits were covered with gold. There was 30 cubits high, but it wasn't all covered with gold.
Oh,
It was only 20 of them that were covered with gold. And then the final answer is that only the partition was 20 cubits high, but the actual room was bigger, but the partition didn't go all the way up to the top. So it was like a partition of 20, it was 20 cubits. It's big enough to be taller than any person, but it did not go all the way to the top. It was actually a 30 cubit ceiling. Okay, so
I just wanted to mention to David that I looked in the dictionary. Shamir is a very known worm that cuts stone.
yeah,
But and then it says something about thistle, that it's cuts of thistle. Thistle is a plant.
right.
So they said it's also called shamir, but not a stone like he said, a rock, to cut a rock.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
David
said-
didn't say that's the meaning. He said that's what Shamir claimed. Doesn't mean that that's correct.
And the second meaning he said was a thorn. Thorn is a
A
thistle.
thorn and
That makes sense.
thistle.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, going back to the discussion here, the Hebrew here has an interesting word. It says Zahav Sagur. It was gold that was closed. What does closed gold mean? That's what they covered. That's what they overlaid the floor and the walls.
Maybe they're talking about gold leaf. Gold leaf.
Gold leaf?
Yes.
Is that what you said? And why would it use the word closed? So
Meaning fabric, maybe.
well, no, closed as in to close the door,
Oh,
like so
okay.
closed gold.
Which
So
verse are you in?
I'm in 20. Zahav Sagur. So Rashi brings a Gemara here that says that it was such high quality gold that all the gold stores used to close their doors. They would shut their shops whenever anyone had this level gold to sell. The other gold stores knew that it's not worth even opening up. So they would close their shops whenever this was available. So
maybe they mean airtight.
That
They made it airtight.
I'm not sure how that would be. How could you make, if this is like a wall, could you make a wall airtight? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, no spaces, that air can go through it.
Yeah, but it's visible to the outside.
It could be visible, but it's
And it's
closed.
still closed on the sides, you're saying, as long as the
Right,
sides are closed?
Right. Between the pieces, it was
Interesting.
vast enough that it was airtight. That's what I would translate it.
Well, the commentaries here, I mean, Rashi brings that Gemara that it meant that it caused all the other gold stores to close up for the day at least, because no one would want to buy any gold anywhere else unless except for this person, whoever has such a high
Either
quality
that or
gold.
they ran out of gold because they took all the gold for the Mizbeach, for the Bet HaMikdash. They
Well,
didn't
this was
have what to sell.
This is a very high quality gold. Now the other explanation over here, just like more of a simple explanation, is that closed means that it was closed in a furnace where they purify it. It was purified gold. In other words, it was already they did the work that they needed to in order to make it pure. We're up to verse 21 now. Solomon then overlaid the inner section of the temple with fine gold. That was I was telling you earlier. It didn't say before about the gold, but really it was also covered. The inner section of the temple was covered with fine gold, and he drew golden chains in front of the partition, and he overlaid it with gold. So there's a lot of gold in Beis Hamikdash.
That's why the stores closed.
Well, it just means the stores closed whenever anyone had this for sale. But it doesn't mean that it closed everyone, that there was none left for people to buy. That's not what it means. The gold was basically used as a means to see. They couldn't really cover the stone with gold because they would have needed to chisel into the stone in order to attach the gold. But for some reason, they were able to paste it onto the wood, or somehow attach it in a way that they didn't need to drill holes into the stone. So in verse 22 it says that he then overlaid the whole temple with gold until the entire temple was completely overlaid. The whole altar that stood opposite the entrance of the inner sanctum he overlaid with gold. So this is the Mizbeach HaZahav, the golden Mizbeach. He overlaid it with that gold, with together with all the other things that he made out of gold. Okay, 23.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Mayam Loe says an interesting thing on 22.
Yeah.
It says in the book of Chronicles, it says that David gave Solomon 3,000 talents of gold, the gold of Ophir, and 7,000 talents of refined silver to plate the walls of the house. So why did he plate them with gold instead? So there's a few different explanations. He says that some say that the silver was for the rest of the rooms and gold was used only for the Holy of Holies and for the sanctuary. Others say that Solomon actually improved on the plans of David that gave him, that he intended to plate the stone walls of the temple directly, which would not be possible with gold because of the dampness of the stones that would cause the gold to be ruined. He decided to use silver instead. But Solomon paneled the walls with cedar first so that he would attach the gold plate. Now, this is the third one. This is interesting. And another approach is that the word kesef in this book of Chronicles, it says the word kesef, actually means gold, because the root letters of this word kesef could also mean embarrass, kosef, chaf, vav, samach, fe. This gold was so pure that it would embarrass any other gold that was there.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Very nice. Very nice. Thank you for enhancing the class with that. That's really
it says it's from Medrash, from Shemos Rabbah.
Great. Amazing. So I was assuming that it was he just had more, like Shlomo HaMelech had much more wealth than David HaMelech had, and so it seemed to me like obvious that David didn't really plan on this golden everything made out of gold. He planned on we'll do it with silver, but Shlomo HaMelech had much more wealth. And it went that way, but that's nice that there's a few other interpretations, and that's the reason why he used wood as well. Is interesting that he used the wood in order to cause moisture to affect the gold and ruin it, and then embarrassing. That is the word. Koisef means to embarrass, so it's a nice interpretation, beautiful interpretation. That it's not to answer the contradiction. Okay, so what was the mizbeach that was opposite this entrance to the Holy of Holies. This is the golden mizbeach that they would bring on it the incense. And so this was also covered with gold. And it was right there, it was placed in the middle of the room facing the Holy of Holies was this golden mizbeach. And so this is the mizbeach that was used for the incense, and it was overlaid with gold. And now we are up to verse 23. And in the inner sanctum, which means in this Holy of Holies, he made 2 kruvim out of olive wood. Each one, its height was 10 cubits. So that's what. The kruvim were 10 cubits high, and 5 cubits the one wing of the kruv, and 5 cubits the second wing of the kruv. 10 cubits from the edge of its one wing to the edge of its other wing. In the other kruv, verse 25, was also 10 cubits, one size and one form for the 2 kruvim. The height of one kruv was 10 cubits, so the second kruv. He put the kruvim inside the inner chamber, and they spread out the kruvim wings. The wing of one touched the wall, and the wing of the other touched the second wall, and the other wing, their other wing, which were in the center of the chamber, were touching wing to wing. So he basically made a second set of kruvim. Obviously, this was from Hashem, commanded by Hashem to create these kruvim, and they stood on the floor. These were different than the ark kruvim. The ark kruvim, they were on top of the ark. These kruvim were stationed on the floor next to the ark, and they spread out their wings. They were 10 amos high, and
10 amos wide,
and as well as each of the wings was 5 amos, so that made each one was 10 amos, altogether 20 amos, and they touched the wall. They were okay. They touched the wall and the wing of the other.
10 and 10.
They touched this one touched the wall and the other one touched the wall, and the middle ones were touching each other. Okay, so he overlaid, verse 28, he overlaid the kruvim with gold. All the walls of the temple were surrounded by designs, an engraved network of figures of kruvim and psalms and blossoming flowers in the inside chamber and in the outside chamber. What did I just say? Palms, excuse me. Let me read that again. All the walls of the temple were surrounded by designs and an engraved network of figures of kruvim and palms and blossoming flowers in the inside chamber and in the outside chamber. So there were all different types of designs with these made out of gold. And he overlaid the floor of the temple with gold also in the inner chamber and in the outer chamber. So we're basically mentioning all of these items that really brought tremendous beauty to the Beis Hamikdash. And then it mentions for the entrance of the inner sanctum, he made doors of olive wood. The door frame was 5-sided. What does that mean? It was 5-sided. It means that it was shaped. The top of it was a point. It was pointy on top. Then it went down and went down straight. So it was like straight up, then like a
triangle,
then like a triangle maybe. Yeah. And so this way, altogether, it was, instead of most doors would be like 5 walls. This one, most doors have 4 walls. This one had 5 walls because it had that extra diagonal at the top, towards the top. It had this diagonal shape to it, and so it was 5-sided.